A postcard to the future me. She found it tucked in the back of a drawer she rarely opened, a thin rectangle of cardboard with softened corners, edges frayed just enough to suggest age. Its surface was unremarkable, cream-colored, blank on the reverse, save for the faint ink of a familiar hand. She had written it years ago, during a summer that had seemed endless, though now it felt distant, almost imagined. The ink had faded slightly, though the words were still legible, carrying the weight of a younger version of herself who had believed that tomorrow could hold answers, closure, and clarity she did not yet possess. The drawer smelled faintly of cedar and paper, of years passed without attention. She held the postcard gently, as though it were fragile beyond its appearance. It was a message to someone she had never been able to reach, or perhaps it was to herself, though she had not realized it at the time. The thought lingered, delicate, like a wisp of smoke in a quiet room. Outside, the afternoon had begun with soft sunlight that pressed through the half-open blinds. It fell in streaks across the floor, across the postcard, across the surface of the table where she had set it down. There was a stillness in the room, a momentary pause that allowed her to notice everything she might otherwise overlook: the subtle grain of wood, the faint hum of distant traffic, the occasional flutter of a curtain in a breeze that had no name. She remembered the day she had written it. The sky had been cloudless, the kind of summer blue that seemed impossible in memory but vivid in recollection. She had sat on the balcony of her small apartment, notebook on her knees, pen poised above the paper, and imagined the life that would come, the choices she had yet to make. She had written not knowing if anyone would ever see it, not knowing if she would even remember it. She had written simply because it was the only way she could reach herself across time, the only way to plant a marker in the shifting landscape of her own life. The words, though plain in her younger hand, carried a weight now that she had not anticipated. They were cautious, careful, hopeful without expectation. She read them aloud softly, her voice brushing against the still air of the room. "Dear future me, I hope you are well. I hope you have found the patience to be kind to yourself. I hope you remember that you are allowed to feel everything and nothing at once. I hope you have learned to let go, even of the things that seem impossible to release." She paused, letting the cadence settle. The future she had imagined then was not the one she lived now. It was both more and less than she had imagined. There were days when she felt she had failed herself, and others when she marveled at the resilience that had carried her through uncertainty. Yet holding the postcard, she felt a strange comfort, a tether to continuity, to a version of herself that had wanted only to be seen, understood, and remembered. She placed the postcard on the table and ran her fingers over it, tracing the slight indentations of ink. Outside, the city moved with its usual imperceptible rhythm. Cars passed, indifferent to the small apartment and the quiet introspection within. A bird landed on the ledge of the balcony, tilting its head, and she watched it for a moment, noting the delicate balance of its wings, the fragile precision that allowed it to exist in motion without faltering. In that observation, she recognized something she had not before. Life, she realized, was composed not only of grand moments, of losses and triumphs, but of these quiet intervals: a bird balanced in sunlight, the curl of a page in the breeze, the subtle warmth of a cup in one's hands. The postcard had reminded her of this, though it had done so silently, indirectly, with no need for ceremony or explanation. She remembered sending postcards in other times, too, though none had survived. Some had been lost in the mail, some had been discarded, some had been forgotten entirely. She had always liked the act of writing them, the sense that a small piece of thought, of care, could traverse distance and time. In this one, she had captured herself, not a version polished for the eyes of others, but raw, unguarded, and sincere. Days passed differently after she rediscovered it. She carried it with her to the balcony each morning, placing it in view while she drank coffee or listened to the distant stir of the city waking. The city itself had changed in the years since she had first written the postcard. Buildings had been renovated, trees grown taller, streets widened. Yet in the midst of it all, the small apartment, the balcony, and the postcard remained a constant, subtle anchor to continuity, a reminder that she had always been moving toward herself, even when she had felt lost. She began to write again, on scraps of paper, in notebooks she had not touched for months. Her words did not follow any plan, they spilled in the quiet intervals, between making meals, watering plants, walking down streets she had not visited in years. They were fragments of thought, fleeting observations, questions she did not expect to answer. And sometimes she imagined herself, years hence, finding these writings as she had found the postcard, a gentle echo, a conversation with someone she would one day become. One evening, after a rain that had washed the streets and darkened the bricks with dampness, she walked to the small park near her apartment. She carried the postcard loosely in her hand, turning it over and over, feeling the texture, the faint inked letters. The park was quiet, only a few leaves stirred by a breeze that moved without urgency. She found a bench beneath a tree whose branches had grown wide since she last noticed them. She sat, placing the postcard on her lap, and let herself imagine sending it once more, this time not across years, but into the very present, a gesture of acknowledgement to the self she was still becoming. She noticed a child nearby, crouched in the dirt, tracing lines with a stick, absorbed in creation. The concentration, the purity of attention, reminded her of the act of writing the postcard, of giving thought to someone who may one day hold it, even if only to witness that the gesture existed. She wondered if the child would remember these small hours, or if they would vanish like footprints in sand, leaving only the impression that something had been here, ephemeral yet tangible. As she sat, the postcard on her knees, she realized that it mattered little if it was read, if it was remembered, if it reached any version of herself she could yet imagine. What mattered was the act itself, the conscious choice to extend care and thought across the intangible, to anchor herself in the presence of attention, however small. The postcard had done that, and she could continue to do it, one fragment of thought, one line of ink, one remembered gesture at a time. The next day, she placed the postcard in a new drawer, one she had cleared and prepared for things that carried weight in memory but not in urgency. She did not intend to open it again soon. Instead, she began leaving her own small notes, short reflections, questions, little reminders, in envelopes and boxes tucked around the apartment. Each was a thread she sent forward, uncertain of reception, certain only of her intention. Weeks passed. She returned to the park, walked along streets, noted the shifts in light through windows, the angles of trees, the way shadows lengthened in the afternoon. The act of noticing became itself a kind of correspondence, a series of postcards written without paper or ink, sent into the present and carried forward in memory. The city, once indifferent, began to feel more like a companion, each corner, each detail, each unnoticed movement carrying significance simply because she had attended to it. She thought of herself years ago, sitting on the balcony, writing to a future she could not yet grasp. She understood now that the future is never something waiting to be reached, but something continually created in these small, deliberate acts of attention and care. In reading the postcard again, she had not only found a trace of herself, she had traced the contours of possibility, of presence, of life lived in awareness of the fleeting and the lasting alike. And so, the postcard returned to its drawer, quiet and unassuming, but potent with possibility. She left it there as one might leave a key under a mat, not to be used, perhaps, but to exist as evidence that care had been given, that attention had been offered, that the self could reach across time in ways subtle and intangible. She moved through her days with this awareness, noting the minor miracles of ordinary life, the tilt of sunlight on a wall, the gentle sway of a branch in wind, the sound of distant conversation that passed without bearing. Each was a postcard to herself, each a deliberate attention to existence. The city, the apartment, the street, the park, all became instruments of reflection, of connection, of quiet acknowledgement. By the time she returned to the drawer months later, she did not feel nostalgia, nor longing, nor regret. She felt only recognition that the act of sending care, of leaving thought behind, of witnessing without expectation, was itself a form of homecoming. The postcard remained as it had always been, a message, a reminder, a subtle conversation across the distances of time and self. She smiled lightly, the kind of smile that acknowledges continuity without finality, and set the postcard aside once more. Life would continue, and she would continue with it, composing small letters to herself in each observed gesture, in each deliberate breath. And the postcard, like all the acts it inspired, existed in quiet affirmation that the self can be remembered by the self, that attention matters more than arrival, and that even small gestures of care have the power to traverse time, unacknowledged yet entirely present.